Hey everyone, Ryan here. Today we're looking at Vampyr, a game that just last week received a performance patch for PS5, Xbox Series X/S, PS4 Pro, and Xbox One X. This is just an overview of the patch and some of my impressions on it, and I played it for a little over 2 hours with the patch, so I can't say how it goes all the way through the game, but I figured it was a good way to spread the good word of Vampyr and give you some of my impressions on the patch. First off, please subscribe to see more content like this. Okay, the performance patch for Vampyr ups the resolution and the frame rate for the game, so if you're playing on PS5 or Xbox Series X, you're going to enjoy 1440p resolution up to 60 FPS. This update was completely unexpected, at least as far as I'm concerned, but nonetheless, I found it very welcoming. At least I thought it was very welcome for a game that I really enjoyed. Vampyr is a severely underrated game that definitely has its issues and its jank at times, but its atmosphere, dialogue, and characters and direction are reason enough alone to jump into it. On the surface, I should tell you this is not a giant update, and while it does definitely add some significant improvements, it's not a full next-gen version of the game, but either way, it's a very welcome patch, in my opinion, that will definitely help convince your friends it's time to jump in if they haven't, or convince yourself of the need to replay it. Maybe this is the time for you to get all the achievements or achieve that ever-elusive platinum trophy. The first thing I was looking for in the patch, and is undoubtedly the first thing that you'll notice, the resolution bump. Now, I play on a 4K TV with my PS5, and I never thought Vampyr looked terrible, but it did look a bit rough in terms of its resolution. It just didn't look as sharp as it could, and even looked a little blurry at times, or a little grainy, and I would even notice a kind of watershed effect on Jonathan as he ran throughout the city. Now, I'm happy to report that this is mostly gone now, and Jonathan, and generally overall, the game looks sharper than it did previously. Now sure, with that comes the fact that you may more readily notice the stilted facial animations that make animatronics look more realistic by comparison, but the resolution bump adds much needed clarity to the game. You can see in these side-by-side comparison shots of my gameplay recordings the differences in the quality of the image alone. For one, as I said many times already, it's crisper, but moreover, you can see its colors even pop a bit more than they did previously. It's more saturated, and it keeps the original vision of the game intact while letting the lighting and color really shine. It doesn't look as drab or discolored as it used to be. Now, I actually debated the need to even make this video here for you and give a short performance review until I looked back at my old gameplay recordings. I actually was not sure the difference here was going to be as stark enough to discuss in great detail with you, but I was pleasantly surprised how massive of a difference it seems to have made. You're still going to see those jank facial animations in a camera that sometimes gets way too close to Jonathan's neck for comfort in conversation, but on the visual level, for resolution, the game just looks way better in 1440p, and it makes the game pop more visually than I anticipated that it would. And one of the things that's most potent, in my opinion, about Vampyr is its cinematography. Yes, the single shot nature of God of War is fantastic and it's gorgeous, but Vampyr, I would argue, has some of the most atmospheric and powerful camera movements in a video game in recent memory as far as I'm concerned. There's a purpose to all the shots, and even when the game takes control away from you on the camera, it's notable for those slow zoom-ins and slowly panning around and effortlessly rotating around its characters. It's another reason that the resolution bump signals more strongly than ever the power of this game's cinematography. Now, what you're probably wondering is how does it hold up in gameplay? That 60 FPS, that resolution. The most important thing here is gameplay, because gameplay is king. Now, a linguistic sleight of hand has occurred of late. You'll see companies come out and say, hey, this game runs in dynamic 4K up to 60 FPS. Dynamic meaning it's not a true 4K, as some upsampling happens, and up to 60 FPS, with the key part being up to, as in it can hit 60, but also it may not at times. Now, you'll notice the Vampyr patch notes here suggesting it is running at 1440p and at 60 FPS, implying it's running at 60 FPS consistently and at a proper 1440p. I'm also happy to tell you, it's a really good 60 FPS. There are maybe one or two parts in the opening moments I notice a slight dip, but overall it's consistent. It feels all the more better to play. It's no secret, but Vampyr is not going to be remembered for its extremely well-tuned combat, and I think it's safe to say that the frame rate being at 60 FPS helps the game feel multitudes better than it did previously, even as far as gameplay is concerned. Even under the pressure of fighting a number of enemies, dashing around the map, and using your various blood-fueled abilities, it holds up. It just feels better to play. Dr. Jonathan Reed, by extension of this enhanced frame rate, is more nimble and reactive, or at least he feels that way. It makes the combat feel faster and more fun. Even when fighting bosses, there's no hitches or drops in frames. It's smooth. It makes revisiting this game even more of a blast with this performance update. That is not to say that the issues with the combat don't persist. There's obviously still issues with the lock-on feature that has a mind of its own, weird level scaling throughout the environment, and other things that I've mentioned before, like jank facial animations. Now, as I said in my review of Vampyr I did back in February, or my 2021 review, I could forgive all of this, but the combat doesn't really have much depth. It's just kind of dodging, stunning, and attacking, and you'll get different abilities upon leveling up, but it's nowhere near comprehensive. You will get stronger and more powerful throughout the game, but you are just doing the same things in the combat the entire time. Stun enemies, attack, bite them, whatever. I got very late in the game when I finally said screw it. I'm running past as many enemies as I can because you don't get that much experience from fighting enemies anyway, which does have a very compelling story / gameplay reason behind it, but at the risk of spoiling that, I won't say why. All this to tell you that the combat is not perfect, but it feels much more fun to run around and shoot abilities and dash with the game now running at 60 FPS. At its core, it is an RPG, so you can still run around and explore and talk to locals, and there's tons of dialogue, and it still maintains that higher frame rate, even as different visual effects take over the screen, be it, as I mentioned before, with the different blood-fueled abilities you have, or you're mesmerizing a character to get them to follow you to a secluded location so you can relieve them of their own blood, because you need it more, goddammit. Or you're just trying to get them to tell you the truth because Dr. Jonathan Reed has tons of questions for every character, and by God does he have tons of questions. I should note you will get enhanced resolutions on PS4 Pro, Xbox Series X, and Xbox One X, but you will be locked at 30 FPS, and I will say either way, I think this is still a welcome update that, if nothing else, will make this game look sharper than it did previously. So it's still worth checking out if you happen to own or play on any of these platforms primarily, but the best enhancements are reserved for the new, more powerful hardware. Now, I think Vampyr is one of those underrated titles that's not given as much credit, at least amongst major outlets, because it doesn't have all of its systems finely tuned and working perfectly, but what you'll find here is a compelling world of interesting characters with tons of dialogue options and choices that weave these complex motivations for each of its characters. Its performances and sound design are also top-notch, with camera work that I think absolutely makes good use of the game's atmosphere. So with this performance patch, I'm very happy with the few hours I've spent with it, so I encourage you, if you do own any of these new consoles, to check out the new patch. Even if you just re-download it to marvel at the enhanced resolutions and frame rates, it's not without the aforementioned jank, as I mentioned multiple times, but for the price you can find it for these days, it's worth checking out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this brief performance overview of one of my favorite games of last gen and its performance patch. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on the game, you can refer to my 2021 review that I did earlier this year, but until then, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down below, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If not, a thumbs down. Consider subscribing, and I will of course talk to you soon. Love you all. Well, at least maybe.
I mean you no harm. I need help.
Die, you fucking leech!
Please, listen to me. I can't make any sense of this.
Shut up, beast!
Who are you? What is this all about? What in God's name?
I'll do the rest of the job.
Just leave me. The sun. It feels like it's burning me to the bone.